mine got rejected by the government because of my background, which was good and bad at the same time.
You are a nice guy. So say, for example, you're building a new house, even a small terrace house, say in Chelsea, and that project is delayed by 6 months because the structural engineer screwed up. You could have been renting that house out, literally for £10,000 per week.
The budget for climate change and coastal defence in the UK is going to be about £1 trillion over the next 100 years.
Hi Mehrdad, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. We work together on several projects, and I know for a fact that you're very highly respected in the office. They actually call you Dr. M because you're so experienced and so leading as an engineer.
Maybe it's because of my cat.
Yeah, I'm sure. In a previous podcast, Mark DiGiorgio joked that you got more letters after your name than exist in the whole alphabet, which is fantastic. But tell us more about how you led up to that position and this position of being highly respected in the industry that you have now.
Thanks for having me. That's been quite a very long journey, to be honest. So starting from obviously university, starting like civil engineering, very standard, and master degree, PhD, and then gaining experience in industry, and then after that just being a chartered engineer. Again, more and more working to become another chartered engineer to different organizations, and then the different level is going to be expert witness, like accredited expert witness. So I would say that's been a good 16 years of like academic work and industry experience at the same time. The only reason I just achieved these qualifications, it wasn't really I wanted them, it's just because I was enjoying the job I'm doing. So it is just, I was like always researching or learning during the process, and obviously this is also important just to be known in the industry, so that's why I just applied for the qualification. But yes, that's quite a very long journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because you seem to wear several hats, which I've done over the last 35 years. Because I've worked in private practice, similar to yourself, working for private developers, etc. I've also worked for governments and for councils, and I've also worked in academia, as a university lecturer, which is great fun. So it is quite rewarding, and I think in some ways beneficial, isn't it, to see things from other sides of the fence occasionally. I've also done a bit of expert witness in planning appeals, where I've been brought in as an external design advisor, helping sort of calibrate or quantify the quality of the scheme, whether it really is high quality or not. But that's, I guess, a slightly more subjective matter, whereas yours is very objective matters, looking at facts.
That's right, yeah.
What would you say, of all the cases you have to be an expert witness on, why did those guys land up in court? What were the main failings of the approach they'd taken or their structures?
I would say the most important is lack of communications. That's the very important part of that, because all these disputes happening and then going to like a legal process, it could have been stopped if at the very early stages you pick up the problem, saying, okay, that's going to be start of a serious problem. Do you just try to stop that and then mitigate the risk and then just eliminate it at the same, just manage the risk somehow or manage the crisis that's happening. But this has been missed in so many like cases. I was involved, or I'm involved at the moment, because that wasn't picked up, and then because it wasn't picked up, then obviously the cost and the damage increased over the time. It could be like a material or like the cost of the labels, anything like that. Then reaching to a point that it becomes unaffordable. So that's why the clients or the contractor or the engineer, they prefer to go to a legal process to just to cover some of the damage they have received. And that's the second issue, could be like obviously incompetency. So whoever is not really competent for that job and trying to be like a consultant or the contractor. Most of these incompetencies happening from the main clients, to be honest, who they want to intervene like like contractors in the process, and then the client saying, oh, I don't want that, I want this one, and they are not going through the professional process. They just directly instruct the contractor, which is causing a lot of issues in terms of like quantity survey evaluation or like the compliance with the building regulations. And then the problem started. Again, it is related also to the cut of communication, because you just directly went to the contractor without going to the professionals.
Yeah, you've also touched on something really important there, which is people going beyond their competency levels.
Yeah.
It's like very often the client trying to get somebody else to do something. So if you need some engineering doing, get a good engineer.
Yeah.
If you say you need a flood risk assessment, get a good flood risk consultant. There's horses for courses, you know. So it's essential to give client good advice and not be led by a client who might be trying to cut corners and cut costs. You've got to stand by your own principles, haven't you? And insist almost that the client appoints the right person for that job, not just the right person in terms of what they do, but somebody who's competent in that discipline. So they get a good flood risk assessor, they get a good daylight and sunlight consultant. So the quality of the team is essential. I'm very intrigued at what kind of projects we're talking about in terms of the split of things that go to court on engineering reasons, in terms of whether they're houses or blocks of flats or small low-rise blocks of flats or high-rise, or commercial projects or public sector projects. What do you have to say about that? What's the sort of mix of projects that you have to get involved in?
It is quite a different range. I would say most of them. So those larger commercial projects, they are like the loss in the project is quite a lot more significant. So you're talking about tens of £1,000,000 possibly. Then like a smaller project, which comes from like extension or like a single house or a few flats. They have dispute with the contractor. But in all of them, when it comes for the commercial project, so your issue regarding like the competency of the people is less involved in that, because you're just working with the larger firms, so everybody knows what's happening or what's going on. There's mainly issues with the program, construction program, or like health and safety issues happen during the project because of the maybe the contractors wanted to speed up the projects and then too much client expectation. And the smaller projects, the issue is mainly regarding to the competency or irrelevant communication or lack of communication at that level. So I would say is you can find problems in most range of the project. And even for the smaller project, they never go to like a kind of the legal dispute process. It's because they don't want to just get the hassle. They're possibly doing a very small project like a single beam or small extension. They are not happy with the job, but they don't want to just get involved with the legal dispute.
So there could be spurious claims where it's structurally sound, but the client is not really happy for other reasons. You've hit on some good points there, fundamentally about managing client expectations as well, regarding things like program, build cost, cost of the team of various consultants, the outlay that's required and reasonably required for those kinds of things. And I guess also things like liquidator damages, So say, for example, you're building a new house, even a small terraced house, say in Chelsea, and that project is delayed by 6 months because the structural engineer screwed up, for the want of a better expression.
Yeah.
You could have been renting that house out, literally for £10,000 per week over those 6 months.
Yeah.
So, like you say, getting a sensible program in the first place, but then adhering to that program, unless there's any unforeseen circumstances, is essential, really, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So it is the reason you need to just have a distinct understanding between the professional part and the construction part, because most of the smaller clients or domestic clients, they go straight to the contractors or builders first without having a proper plan. They don't have any drawings or any kind of like engineering design or anything like that. And some of these builders saying, okay, they start the working, they say, okay, I will do that, and then in the middle of the work saying, I need the drawings, I need the engineering design. Well, most of them, I'm working with them, that they don't do that. They ask for the design before they actually getting involved with that. But when the contractor or builder get involved in that, so it means it's starting to charge you, and then you can't actually use your property because this is under the contractor's premises at the moment because of the health and safety issue.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you don't have the drawing, you have to wait for the design, which is costing you a lot more. And then imagine if that professional is not competent enough or not delivering the job to you, it's costing you more.
Yeah.
But if people understanding that quite on distinct between professional or design stage and construction stage, they have a lot less issues because you know who is responsible for what and who is doing when, and then what's your program. And then you mentioned about like even larger projects. So what can like imagine like HS1 project. So it's been disputed for about billion pounds. So the reason is like whoever just started doing the cost estimation, they deliberately did the cost estimation lower than what's in reality. That's what actually in the news like 3-4 months ago. And the government obviously just allocated the budget, but the project wasn't finishing. Like adding up more and more budget for that.
So that's nobody's fault,
Yeah,
really.
exactly. So
Not even the original QS. Yeah, I've heard that in the past, that these big projects, the politicians just say what is politically acceptable at the time, don't they?
yeah,
And then assume it's going to be escalated over the next
exactly,
10
yeah.
years or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah, that could be going wrong for costing a lot, and then they had to just stop the project to some extent. And now it's not going to Manchester, stopping at Birmingham, just because someone didn't do cost estimations right.
yeah, let's hope it does go to Manchester eventually, and also to
Yeah,
Leeds
hopefully.
via Nottingham, because I'm a great believer in infrastructure, as I'm
Yeah.
sure you are as well. Speaking of infrastructure, one of the issues, partly related to climate change, of course, is coastal erosion and sea level rises. I understand you're involved in coastal defences. Have you got anything to add about that?
Yeah, so I studied in coastal defense. I got PhD in that. But it was quite interesting story. I went to coastal defense. So I initially wanted to study at nuclear power plants, and I applied that. I got approved by the university, but you usually had for when it is quite sensitive subject, you will have to send a letter to the government, the Home Office actually saying get kind of permission. The mine got rejected by the government because of my background,
Wow. Yeah.
which was good and bad at the same time. Because,
You are a nice guy. I put my own opinion is you're not a security risk in any stretch of
yeah,
your
actually, I was a
imagination.
security risk at the time, which was quite disappointing at that time. But I mean, I didn't get disappointed completely. So there was another opportunity. My supervisor mentioned about like coastal defense, and then there is like a bursary. You can go there, maybe just try your chance on that. So which I went there. I find it quite very interesting because at the time I started, it was quite very high demand. At the moment, it's also very high demand, and the budget for climate change and coastal defense in the UK is going to be about £1 trillion over the next 100 years. So it is already like the strategy, the government plan for that, because it's quite serious issues over the coastal defense now because of the sea level rise. And especially in Kent area, so we know a lot happening around like coastlines like Gravesend and Sheerness, and it's about like the whole like area in that, because that's the entrance to the London as well. They're just controlling the Thames water.
Do you think we'll need a second Thames barrier at some stage?
Yes, they are thinking about that as well. Yes, it's quite involved at the moment, but it is not just also around the coastline. It is also in mainland as well, because you could see a lot more floodings happen. And some of the, like if you go somewhere near like Pendleton and Tunbridge Wells, around those areas, so you could see like a lot more ponds. It's just forming now, like compared to 5 or 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure. I mean, as soon as you get south, I mean, we're talking Kent now, guys. As soon as you get south of Tenterden, you're at sea level. basically, aren't you? And
Yeah.
the sea, you've got the sank ports and things.
Exactly.
It's all very vulnerable. I mean, we had a few schemes actually down on the marsh, talking about Romney Marsh, and we actually paused the progress of one of our schemes for a year or two because the government spent, it sounds quite small fry to you probably, £35 million on coastal defences.
Yeah.
So our particular site went from being officially an undefended situation to then being a defended situation, which obviously made a big difference to the flood risk assessment. There was still risk, of course, because you can have a sluice gate failing and the water rushes in behind the coastal defence. One thing on that subject that makes me not amused, but is a very interesting subject, is the principle of managed retreat, isn't it? So if there's not any really important assets or many people living in an area, then the government is prepared to, you have to give up a few kilometres of land. So imagine finding out that your house is in an area of managed retreat. You might say, what are you going to do about this? And then they tell you, actually, you're in managed retreat.
Yeah, it's not cost effective. Yeah, that could be very expensive. So obviously it's not public, but we all know about the rumors saying the government possibly giving up from some of the lands and accepting that's going to be submerged at some time, or there's no major investment on that part.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is also additional cost on private sector as well. Saying I have a project in Chertsey at the moment, so this is on flood zone area, and they are just building about 150 flats with existing commercial change of use to residential. So there is an evacuation plan. So, I mean, from government point of view or council point of view, they have accepted that the site is going to be flooded, but not the residential part, but the whole car park area is going to be flooded. So you will need to have evacuation plan in terms of serious flooding. But from private sector point of view or commercial point of view, the clients want to keep the car park accessible. Otherwise, nobody is going to pay for that, or it's going to be the cost is going to be the value of the building is going to be lower.
And you've lost £5 million worth of cars.
Sadly,
It's similar to the building regulations in a way, in relation to fire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's been some, a really important timber frame schemes that have caught fire recently. We won't mention any names, but we're all aware of which ones that we're talking about. And do you think the building regulations are all predicated on the protection of life, the preservation of life, and getting people out? So if you look at Part B, the building could burn down, provided everybody's safe. But of course, from an insurance perspective, they don't want the building to be burnt down. So a lot of these things these days are often being driven by the insurance sector, aren't they? Over and above the basic building regulations.
That's right, yeah. So it's just a mix of commercial and public interests in there. And the fact that you can't really fight with nature's power. You have to just stand against or just control it somehow. But it costs you as well. So we discussed that, construction costs going higher. Some of them is because of compliance, but some of them is because of the natural power.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's an absolute pleasure to chat to you, Mehrdad, as always.
Thank you, you too,
there's no question you're on top of your game. And thank you for those insights, especially on those detailed aspects as well.
Thank you for having me.